with warehouses, all the years I've been working with it, what I like is often it's within four walls. So it's the system that you're looking is very clear, and you have input and output. And it's easy to talk about and explain. But when you start scratching the surface, something that seems very simple, it very quickly becomes extremely complex. When I started teaching this course, it was in 2010. Before that, I worked with the United Nations. I worked with warehousing out in emergency operations. But when I started doing research and then teaching in 2010 until 2020, those 10 years, I would say warehousing has gone through a dramatic or fantastic journey, moving up on the agenda. Because it's no longer possible to neglect and just look at it as, okay, we put it there and it costs some money and then the important is production and transportation. We can actually get cutting edge by having the right warehouse which is tailored for exactly your needs. If I went to a warehouse 10 years ago, many of them looked kind of the same way. But now we're talking retailing, so then you have other warehouses like for production and so on. But now if you go into warehouses, you may find that they actually look quite different, and they're more tailored. They often grow in size, and they have chosen either to integrate, separate online and retail store. They have chosen a specific automation solution that fits. So it's more interesting now, I think, to actually go out and see, well, okay, you solved it in this way, and okay, what are your challenges? What are your contexts? What lead times do your customers require? How big are your products? And so on. Dangerous to look at another warehouse and say, okay, we're gonna follow them and copy what they did. Rather, it's more important now to really understand what is our context here and really design it. Take good time for the planning. The competences is a little bit shifting. I used to work in a warehouse myself, driving a forklift. You can still have that in part of the warehouse, but you also have a lot of technology in different shapes, depending on what are your context, challenges, and so on. So you can either if you focus on chasing lead times, for example, to make a really fast throughput, or you focus more on a flexible system that can handle variations in sizes and variations in order patterns, or you can choose a system that more squeezes out the space, like build high and so on. So and those discussions are currently ongoing in almost every company, retailer, high up in the organization. So I think automation now has moved from if, and it's more like a how question, and we have more types of automation that can, be really tailored to your specific operation. So before we could see that it was a few companies that really are pioneers. Now it's just you have to have it. So the question is really, okay, what automation should you have? And I think now we see more and more flexible automation. Before it was used to say that, okay, people are flexible, automation is not so flexible, so you lose flexibility. But I think the new or next generation of automation is now, with artificial intelligence, is even going further into that area, and it's quite the opposite, like it's more flexible with the robots. So it has kind of changed the game. I think it all started a few years back with the increase of e-commerce, challenging the traditional way of using a warehouse to send goods to the physical retail stores, quite large deliveries, and suddenly you're mixing in a warehouse with like a customer that ordered one pair of shoes and 2 t-shirts and so on. And we saw how this created a challenge in many warehouses. And we could also see that different retailers started to following different paths. And then we started asking, okay, what paths are they following, and why are they doing it? So one obvious thing is, like, if you're in a warehouse, should you combine the distribution for retail stores, which are bigger distribution, like filling bigger trucks, and e-commerce? Should you put it all in the same place? And the benefit of doing that is probably you use the same inventory, so it's less tied up capital, for example. Or should you separate them into 2 different warehouses and doing one pure online, where you could tailor the warehouses more for online or for the retail stores? And so we could see how companies started to follow different paths, but it was more like trial and error, no real guidance. The obvious ones are the size of the throughput, clearly, because then you can get some economy of scale in your operation. Then I would say it's size of goods, because we can see still the automation solutions, many of them are tailored more for smaller articles, SKUs. So if you have very little variation, then you can really tailor and make a specific. But as soon as you start to add variation in the types of orders that you receive, so for example, mixing in the retail store orders with the e-commerce orders, then you need to start putting more money into your solution. And the similar goods size, if you have a big variation, then you have to have different zones maybe, and you can have different solutions for there. So, and then you have the issue with the demand variations over, often then we talk about the year. You can have Black Friday or any holiday where it suddenly is like 500% the increase in the demand. Often when you go out to warehouse managers and then to start talking about what are their main issues or what main factors that they consider, those are the ones like throughput, the goods characteristics, the order characteristics. And then of course we have other factors, depending on where in the world, the cost of labor, for example, the cost of land, if you're close to a city or if you're out in the outskirts where you can perhaps buy more land. And then one factor that is still showing when we go into different automation solutions is still it's the history. Because often you don't get the chance to make a greenfield project. You build on what you already have. The global giants kind of setting the agenda and the competition. So we see some kind of cluster movement where they are offering 12-hour lead time. We need to also offer that time. But if you have then shorter lead times, this is, I would say, one of the major trends that impacts warehouses. You come to a point where you have trade-offs, so you can't just keep cutting the throughput times in the warehouse while you're going to handle a big mix of orders and a big mix of goods. So then you need to look into what options do we have. And I think that is one very interesting trend. Like if you go back 20 years, we many centralized to create economy of scale, but now maybe we see a trend going more towards decentralized. And then we come to not only having the big central warehouses, but creating other types of material handling nodes. So I think if we read about micro fulfillment centers, so it's like warehouses or material handling nodes closer to the customers, because we cannot fulfill that short lead time only in the warehouse. So we need to look at the warehouse and the distribution network together and see how can we solve this issue. But I think first of all realize that you need team with strong competences. So you need a strong logistics manager with solid understanding of warehousing. It's once you start scratching the surface, it's very complicated, and then you need a team with, you know, the IT manager and understanding of automation. So we can see those logistics warehousing teams grow. So I would say make sure you have the competences in-house. If you're smaller and you need to find it externally, then find a good partner to guide you, not to be sold a system that doesn't really fit your business. So it's all about that matching and fitting, and then it's a good investment. Otherwise you're stuck with the system, and that's the complexity and issue for warehousing, because the world is changing really fast and warehouses are very difficult to change fast. So all the more important to not get it exactly right, but you know, as close as possible, and try to look into the future and to see the big picture, and work closely with the entire supply chain, because they influence each other, the warehouse and the supply chain.